guys, this is Miss J, your O&A Levels English instructor. So, in continuation with our previous videos, today we are still discussing our paper 1, which is reading. And inside our paper 1, we are discussing section A's question number 1, comprehension. Previously, we have covered our synonyms question and we also started discussing our story that we will be using to solve all our questions. The story was about Albert the Lion. Right. And the topic and the type of question that we are concerned with today is called the explicit question. Before we get on with the type of question and how we're supposed to solve them, let's start by talking about what does the word explicit even mean? What does the English word explicit even mean, right? Mostly, the context in which this word is used is, for example, to refer to explicit content or some explicit videos. Usually if you ever go to a cinema or if you're going to watch a movie or if you just put on a movie at your own home, there's usually a warning that this video contains explicit content. Keep it away from children. So using these context clues, what can we understand? What would this word mean? To explain it further, I would like to give you an example. Okay, imagine there are two different people. And one of them, Jane, directly says that I'm craving some cheesecake. She directly expresses her concerns. She directly expresses what she wants. Okay, she states it clearly up front. However, on the other hand, there's another guy named Harry, and he says that, he's lightly hinting at the fact that I've had a very long day. I sure could use a sweet treat. I sure would like something sweet. Stuff like that. He doesn't specifically directly say that he would want some cheesecake. Okay, maybe even if we take this sentence out, if you just look at this sentence, I've had a very long day, or I would love to have something to take my mind off of it, stuff like that. So basically, he's just hinting at the fact that he hasn't had the best day and he wants something as a result, okay? He wants something as a reward to make up for his bad day, right? Now, using these examples, we can understand what the word explicit means, okay? So basically, beta, explicit refers to stuff that is direct. Anything that is clear, that is straightforward. You could also say something that is given on the surface. Okay? Anything that is given on the surface. For example, if I were to ask you from these two people, from these two speakers, Jane and Harry, who has expressed their interests in an explicit manner? All of you would answer, it is obviously Jane. Jane has directly said what she wants. She has been straightforward and clear. That is what the word explicit means. Alright? On the other hand, as a direct antonym, we have the word implicit. Okay, so implicit words, when I say that implicit is a direct opposite of explicit, it obviously means that since explicit things or explicit words are straightforward, implicit words will be indirect. They will not be straightforward. So if I'm going to tell you the meaning of implicit, I would say anything that is indirect, anything that is not clearly stated. Okay, not clearly stated. Instead, it's only hinted at. So, for example, Harry was only hinting at the fact that he might want something to take his mind off of his grievances or his bad day, right? So, to make it even simpler, I would say that implicit things or implicit meanings or implicit sentences are those that make you read between the lines, that make you think, So stuff that you need to deduce, that you need to think about, you need to decode on your own. It won't be given right on the surface. You will have to make sense of it by yourself. Like, for example, Harry's conversation. You would have to pick up on the hints and understand what he was hinting at. I hope that is clear enough. Today, the topic of our video today, we have already understood what explicit versus implicit is. The topic of our video today isn't what the word explicit means. It is, what are explicit questions? Okay, just like the synonyms question that we just solved, explicit questions are another type of part that you will encounter on your question 1 comprehension. You explicit parts are actually divided, they're scattered around on question number 1. So you might get around 4 to 5 marks worth of explicit questions, maybe even more, but this is the minimum. At least 4 to 5 marks are set apart for explicit questions. So listen to me carefully whilst I explain how you're supposed to solve these questions, okay? All right. Now, we already know what the word explicit versus implicit means, but our primary concern isn't the meaning of the word, it is that how will we solve these questions? Before we talk about how will we solve these questions, the first and most important thing is how will we identify that any given question is explicit. For example, for the previous part, for the synonyms part, I told you about specific keywords that will be given in the question. For example, they will ask you about the meaning of the phrase. Now, for explicit questions, the keywords that we are looking for are these. You will either find that the question says find, identify, or give. What do all three of these words even mean? What does it mean if the examiner says find something or identify something? How or when do you even find stuff? You find stuff when anything is right there in front of you and you just can't look at it. So the answer will be right there in front of you. You only need to pluck it out. Okay, there's a text given and then the answer will be given in front of you directly on the text. Okay, maybe you guys have played that game ever in your life. It's called Where's Waldo. Has any of you played that game before? So basically, Where's Waldo is a game where there's a bunch of people. Okay, it's like a picture of like a lot of people, different people, and then inside those, amongst those people, there's a man, there's a guy, there's a boy named Waldo who wears a striped shirt. And from all those people, you just need to find them. Like you find the differences, for example. So these all three of these keywords will, if you encounter any of these keywords in a question, you should be 100% sure that you have encountered an explicit question. If the question uses any of these wordings, find, identify, or give, it will always be an explicit question. Okay, now, before we move on, one more thing that I would like to tell you about is, for explicit questions, you don't need to use your own wordings. For explicit questions, you can copy directly from the text. If you will only need to use your own wordings if the question says that use your own words. Otherwise, if it just says find 2 reasons, identify 2 reasons, give 2 ideas, you don't have to use your own words. You can extract it directly from the text. Okay, so pretty much ever since the syllabus has changed, you have not encountered any single question where the examiner asks you to use your own words for an explicit question. But it might happen in the future, therefore you should be prepared for it. So only if and only if the examiner says that using your own words, identify 2 reasons, only then do you have to use your own words. Otherwise, you can lift, copy from the text. Fair enough. But the only thing that you should actually be mindful of, the only thing that you should be mindful of is that if your question, if your text uses any pronoun, pronouns are words that are used in the place of nouns. So, for example, any word that you would use in the place of someone's name, like I, he, she, all right, it. Don't use pronouns for your explicit questions. Okay, that is one thing that you should be mindful of. You don't have to write in your own words. However, whilst you're lifting, try to use complete names instead of pronouns. Because obviously, beta, once you are reading a story, you will encounter a bunch of male characters, you might encounter a bunch of female characters. So if you just use the word she or he, it can be extremely confusing and dubious for the examiner. So don't make it hard for them or yourself and just name the characters. Otherwise, you can lift from the passage. You can lift from the excerpt. All right. Now, what else? Now, the other thing that we're concerned with is I'll show you two questions. Okay, let's read these questions. The first question reads, give one reason why the writer soon has more time to learn something about lions. What is the key word here? The key word here is give. In the second question, now you read part D and tell me what's the key word there. The key word is identify. Exactly. So just by reading the keywords, we know that it is an explicit question. But one thing that I want to clear up front is that if you read this question, the question directly states you only need to give one reason. You need to focus on this word here, one. All right. So beta, there's a note for you. This is a very important note that you must remember. All right. You must remember that in question number 1, which is your entire comprehension question of 16 marks, in question number 1, if the examiner specifies how many reasons or points you need to write, you will only write that exact number. You will not exceed that number. So, for example, in the first part, C, the examiner says that give one reason. You should only give one reason. You shouldn't be over smart. You shouldn't think that, oh, I'll write 2 reasons and if one of them is correct, I'll get the marks. That's not worth it. You might end up gaining 0 marks in that question. All right. Maybe your second reason is correct and the examiner only reads the first one and crosses it out, gives you 0 marks. So if the examiner asks you for a specific number of reasons, for a specific number of points, stick to that number. Do not exceed. You get to the examiner might penalize you. All right. Obviously, there's no negative marking in Cambridge, but you can just lose your marks. You can just get a 0 out of 1. And you just lost your marks. That's just as bad as negative marking. All right. So that's very important. Now, once more, if the question doesn't specify, if the question doesn't tell you that give one reason or give 2 reasons, you can still know how many reasons or points do you need to write. How can you know that? By the marks of the question. If the question has 1 mark, you need to write 1 reason, 1 point. If the question has 2 marks, 2 reasons, 2 points, okay? Just like that. And to ensure that you don't cross your limit, you can also number your points. You can say 1 and then just give 1 reason here. 1, 2 if it asks you to give 2 reasons. The examiner also makes it easy for you sometimes and then they just give you a marked answer sheet. The answer sheet already has these numbers on it to make it easier for you. But if it does not have the numbers, you can write the numbers by yourself. All right, that is pretty much it one more thing that I want to, what do you say? Yeah, one more thing that I want to talk about is exactly how will we answer this question now. Okay, the first thing that we will do is, we're going to read the question, and the question might just have a line number. I told you in the previous video that the line number does not have the answer. The line number only tells us that the part in the question that is copied from the text, right? We know that any phrase, any sentence is in inverted commas is copied from the text, right? So the line number only tells us that this specific sentence is taken from this specific line. So you read the question and you know the line number, right? You know from where your question has been extracted. So you go to the point in the text around which your question is centered, that line, and then read a bit before it and a bit after it, and you will find your answer at surface level. For explicit questions, you don't need to dig too deep. The answer will be right in front of you. You only need to find it. Only need to find it, beta. And once you have found your answer, once you have found any sentence that directly answers your question, just write it as it is. You can copy it. So, for example, let's see here. Let's read the question. The question says that give one reason why the writer soon has more time to try to learn something about lions. Now, we haven't read the text. Even if you have read the text, I don't think you would remember the answer. So I'll just give you an example answer. So the question is basically asking us why someone has more free time in their lives, right? Right? For example, the text has this written. Okay. For example, the text reads that the writer just quit his job and has more time on his hands. Do you think that this sentence is a direct answer of the question? It is, right? The question is, why does the writer have more time? You have just said that he lost his job, he quit his job, and now he has more time. Does that sound like a direct answer? Yes. And if you read anything that sounds like a direct answer, you best believe it will be the answer. That is how explicit questions work. Okay, now obviously we're going to solve these two questions according to the text in just a minute. But before we move on, I would like to explain why I have starred this word what and why I did not say that. Once you encounter the keyword what, I never said that if you encounter the keyword what, you can be 100% sure that it will be an explicit question. You can't be 100% sure by the keyword what. Okay, and the reason behind it is that you guys must know that what is a very generic word, right? We hear the word what thrown around a lot. Okay, so if, remember, listen to me carefully. If you only read the keyword, if the question only has the keyword what, for example, the question is, what is the writer's job? Then that will be an explicit question. However, beta, once we move on, we're also going to learn keywords about implicit questions, okay, and the other types of questions. But the actual other type of question is mostly implicit. So, for example, if you have a question like this, the question is, what does the writer do in this moment? Explain how. What does the writer? He must feel. What are the writers? Yeah. So in the beginning of the question, you have the keyword what. However, later your question has another keyword, which is actually a keyword of the implicit part, that is explain. So beta, in those cases, for example, if you have a question in which your what keyword has is followed by a keyword, one of these implicit question keywords, only and only in that case, your keyword what will be overridden. Okay, I know this is a very intricate detail. You don't really need to worry about it. However, you should know that once you have the keyword what, you can't be 100% sure that it is an explicit question. Only if the question is a direct question with only the keyword what in it, only then can you be sure that it's gonna be an explicit question. Otherwise, just by reading the keyword what, you can't be sure that it is an explicit question. Okay, you will need to use your brain a little bit. Okay, you will need to use your deduction skills a little bit. It won't be that straightforward. So I would just say that I would tell you to read the question. Okay, I'll tell you to read the question entirely. If the keyword what is followed by an implicit keyword, it is going to be it's going to be an explicit, it's going to be an implicit question in that case. If there's an implicit keyword afterward, it will become an implicit question. I want you guys to take notes of this page, and then we're going to start off with our other part. Okay, beta, now since we have discussed everything that we need to know about the lecture, now we're going to go on and solve these two example questions, and I hope by the end of this you are really clear on how you're supposed to solve them, what you're supposed to do. Okay, let's start. So let's start by reading the first part. The first part says that give one reason why the writer soon has more time to try to learn something about lions. What was our first step? Our first step was go to where your question is centered. And we know from the question that it is around line 16. So let's go on our text and go to line number 16. See, this is our line 15 here. So the line below it is line 16. And on this line 16, I have highlighted the exact sentence that we are looking for. To try to learn something about lions. Since we are looking to answer our question, I told you read the text centered around the question. So we won't just read the exact line, we'll start reading from a few lines prior. So let's start reading from the start of this paragraph because just 2 lines before that one. Okay, what does the text say? As you must remember, or if you don't remember, the text is from the writer's point of view. So it's written from the point of view of the person about whom we are supposed to answer this question. So it's going to be written in first person POV. So he's going to be talking about himself. I did this and stuff like that, okay? So here he's saying that my first few days were fully occupied with memorizing the daily chores of feeding and cleaning. But this work was fairly basic. And once I had mastered it, I had more time for trying to learn something about lions. What is he saying? Previously, before he was occupied with his daily tasks, with his daily chores. But what has changed now that has given him more time? He has mastered these chores. Okay? Even though we did not read the text after the sentence that we were concerned with. But I stopped reading because I thought I found the answer. And did I find the answer? Did I find a reason that opens up some time for the writer? I did. And what is that reason? The fact that he mastered his daily chores. Right? So this is our answer. That the fact that the writer mastered his daily chores opens up more time for him. And how will I write it? I will simply say that the question asks, why does the writer have more time? I'll answer it like that. The writer soon has more time because he mastered his daily chores. If I wanted, I could have also used the names of the chores. I could have said because he mastered feeding and cleaning. Alright, now look here. Do you notice that I did lift the answer from the text? But I made a minor difference. And what is this minor difference that I made? Alright, this is important, okay? This is another note for you guys that I told you, you can lift from the text, okay, to save your marks. But there's just a little difference, this is just a little switch up that you should make. That should be in your practice, and that switch up is that if your text uses pronouns, you should substitute, you should replace the pronouns with the nouns or names of the character. For students who don't know what pronouns are, beta, basically pronouns are words that we use in place of nouns. You must know nouns, right? Nouns are like names, places, animals, things, feelings, etc., etc. There's a lot of stuff that is noun. That is a noun. And pronouns are the words that we use when we don't name a noun. For example, he, she, it, I, my. If I copied the sentence from the text word for word, the sentence that I would have gotten would have been, I had mastered the daily chores, right? Because what does the text say? The text says I, because the text is from the writer's point of view. So this is just a minute, really small difference that you can make in your answer to ensure any confusions, which is that instead of using any of these pronouns, do not use the pronouns. Instead, name the character. Right? Name the character. Why is it important? Why is it so important? Think about it. A single story can have like 4 male characters or 3 male characters. If you just use the word he, it would create a lot of confusion for the examiner. How would they know which male are you talking about? So to clear that up, we do not use pronouns, we try to use nouns instead. Okay, now let's solve our second question. The question reads, the lion is called king of beasts. Identify why this name is unzoological. Before we solve the question, can you tell me which is the key word that helps us identify that this is an explicit question? Take 5 seconds. The keyword is identify, and in the previous question the keyword was give. Yeah? Okay. So now let's go back to our text. The line number that we're looking for is line number 21. Line number 21 is this one, the second line, the line right after line number 20. I have already highlighted the necessary parts of that were given in our question. Let's now try to solve the question, okay? Because the question is centered around line number 21, I'll start reading it from a few lines before that. Let's start reading it from here, okay? From this blue pointer that I've marked, I'll read it for you. The text says that there is probably no other animal in folklore that has been endowed with as many imaginary virtues as the lion has. A quick reminder of the meaning of these words. Folklore means any stories, fables, tales. Okay, endowed means to provide something, virtues means good quality, good qualities. So basically what does the sentence mean? The sentence means that there's no other animal in these fictional stories that has been given this amount of good qualities as the lion has. And how did the writer get to know about this? The writer, discovered this when I decided to read all I could and see how it matched my own observations. Since the writer now has more time on his hands, he uses that time to learn more about lions, as we just answered in the last question. And how does he learn more about lions? By reading about them. And he then compares the reading that he does with his own observations. because he actually works with lines, doesn't he? He works with Albert the lion, so he notices things about Albert and then he reads about lions and then he compares them. And after these comparisons, what does he find out? He finds out that ever since someone in a moment of unzoological enthusiasm, unzoological means, not backed by evidence, not backed by his observations at the zoo, not backed by the lion's behavior at the zoo. Okay, ever since some guy in a moment of unzoological enthusiasm called the lion the king of beasts. Okay, one day some guy just called the lion, he said, oh, the lion, he's the king of all animals. Ever since that day, writers have vied with each other to produce evidence of the lion's right to this title. Vied means to compete. Ever since that day, all writers have competed with each other that they will produce evidence of the lion's right to this title. They will bring proof that the lion is worthy of this title. Although, notably, no scientist has ever done so. So what does this mean? Some guy just called the lion the king of beasts. For example, I go and just say Chelsea is the best team of all time, best football club of all time. I mean, they are the best club, but I'm sure most of you won't agree. For you, it would be like, some girl just said that. And since there is no proof, and whose proof do we listen to? We listen to scientists' opinions, right, when we think about evidence or proof. So, in the same manner, some guy just liked the lion and called him the king of beasts. But ever since that day, there has actually been no proof of that statement. Now, let's see if this answers our question. I told you, whenever you think you found an answer, think about it. Does it directly answer a question? Does it seem like a direct answer? Yes, it obviously is a direct answer, because exactly that is what it means by unzoological. Not backed by the zoo, not backed by proof. So you'll say that, why is the name unzoological? Simply, you'll say that no scientist has ever produced evidence for this claim, for this title. Okay, and here we conclude our lesson on explicit questions. You can watch my next video to learn about implicit questions. And I know we did not do a lot of practice. However, explicit questions are also related to our other type of questions, which is implicit plus explicit. So we will be practicing more about that on my video afterwards. So after implicit questions, I'm going to do another video on implicit plus explicit. So there you will do more practice on that. And even that is not the end, because I will post complete solutions of complete entire past papers, complete entire yearlies. Okay, as you must know, since the O-levels English language syllabus has changed, we don't have that many past papers, right? We barely have a few, right? So I have compiled my own past papers, I have compiled my own examinations for you and I to solve together. I will also upload those PDFs on the Drive link in the description, so you can solve them with me. And that is it for today, beta. See you next time. Allah Hafiz.